Joining me now by phone, Fran Townsend. She's the former Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to President George W. Bush. Fran, thank you very much for being here. First of all, your thoughts on the impact this is going to have on the United States?
Well, Megyn, look, I mean, we have been very concerned about illegal immigration, taking in Syrian refugees. I mean, all of this is, we've got to get more facts, right? We've got to understand, were the attackers in Paris refugees? Were they returning foreign fighters, that is, French citizens who returned? Or were they homegrown? We don't know the answer to that, and it may be a combination, some of all three. But it will certainly impact the way the United States looks at and approaches our efforts at disruption.
Meaning infiltration?
Absolutely. Sure, you're going to look at the communications these guys had. You know, you can't pull off multiple simultaneous attacks without a good deal of planning and communication.
Right.
Training. Where did they get these weapons from? How did they get the ammunition? These kinds of weapons are not common in Western Europe. And so there's a bunch of questions that investigators and intelligence officials are going to have to look at and answer, so we can understand here, what can we learn to prevent the same sort of attack.
Fran, do you find it surprising that the Paris police are saying that all of the attackers are dead so soon? I mean, do we know? Because the reports were attackers drove by, they unleashed firepower on different restaurants, they threw some grenades. It seems so early to affirmatively declare that they've all been killed.
It does seem early to me too, Megyn. And besides that, even if that's true, the individuals who were pulling the triggers tragically in Paris, they had to have a support network. And so even if you got all the attackers, there's a support network in and around Paris that no doubt investigators are trying to identify and scoop up now.
What level of sophistication, how would you rate this?
Oh, no. To have multiple simultaneous attacks, that we're talking about 5 to 6 sites with various kinds of weapons. We heard suicide vests. We've heard grenades. We've heard AK-47s. To have that variety of armaments, multiple locations at a coordinated single time, no, that's a pretty sophisticated effort, the likes of which we haven't really seen before.
And the targeting of the soft targets, I mean, is that the wave of the future, Fran? Because we've been talking about here in this country for some time. Is this what's going to happen? Does Paris, does France, does the United States become Israel in effect, where that's the new reality?
No question. Look, the bad guys have moved to soft targets because they're just easier and more available for them. I mean, there are things we can do to disrupt these and to try and, but we need sort of surveillance tools. We need intelligence, and we need the resources put against those capabilities to ensure that we continue to have the edge to try and disrupt plots.
But we're going the opposite way, are we not? We're going the opposite way right now in the country.
Exactly right. And, you know, we've become complacent over time because we've been successful at disrupting them in the United States. And that's a vulnerability. That complacency becomes a vulnerability where we think, well, we haven't seen those attacks in the United States, so we're going to take those tools away. This should be a reminder about why we need them.
You know, President Bush once said, if America shows weakness and uncertainty, the world will drift toward tragedy. That will not happen on my watch. Do you believe that's happened? I mean, does this have anything to do with American power or not?
Look, I think what we're seeing is when America fails to lead, nature abhors that sort of vacuum, and others will move to fill that vacuum. You know, I think we've unfortunately, the administration has taken the view that the threat is an away threat. It's something that happens over there in Syria. It's not an American problem. We've heard some talk about concern about foreign fighters, but frankly, you can't approach this as I call it, an away game, right? Because of the internet, because of social media that ISIS uses to recruit and inspire individuals inside the United States, and because of travel, right? We know that these guys, the foreign fighters, will bleed out. They continue to be drawn to this alleged caliphate that they have, and they will bleed out. And they will bleed out first to places like Western Europe, like France, like London. But inevitably, you're going to find that they make their way to the United States. I mean, the FBI has got investigations in all of the 50 states. We've seen a number of arrests over the last 18 months related to ISIS and terrorism inside the United States. And so, look, we need the resources and the tools in order to prevent these attacks, and it's still going to be a challenge.
The target selection here, Fran, when you see a concert hall, a crowded concert hall with an American band, a stadium with a jam-packed with the current president of France along with the former, with thousands of people there, and then restaurants where people socialize and connect with one another socially, meant to produce mass casualties.
Absolutely. And look, and the weapons that they use, the AK-47s, we've heard eyewitness accounts where these guys were prepared with ammunition to reload multiple times. So these guys were in there, and they were determined to cause as many casualties as possible.
And yet we saw what we believe, what the authorities are all saying, ISIS kill 224 people on a Russian jetliner 2 weeks ago as it was flying over Egypt, 224. And tonight they're saying, the reports so far are believed 158 dead in Paris. But there's a special brand of terror when the people know it's coming, and it happens in different pockets and in places unlike an airplane where you understand you are at some risk, places where, for lack of a better term, you don't expect it.
Right. I mean, and that's, the nature of these multiple simultaneous attacks. It has that quality to it, right? Because the first one happens and the city sees that, and all of a sudden these attacks begin to pop up at various locations, and then nobody feels safe. No one in Paris could possibly have felt safe as these events were unfolding. Mm-hmm. And in fact, for good reason, law enforcement in Paris told Parisians to stay home, stay in your homes. And frankly, so people were frightened. Mm-hmm. No one felt safe anywhere in the public.
The deputy mayor came out tonight and said, we are truly facing an unknown and unprecedented era in Paris, France. Fran, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Megyn.